There's been a lot of attention paid, and rightly so, to what is becoming a truly unparalleled destruction of civilian life in Gaza. Unparalleled certainly within the last several decades, if not going all the way back to World War II. There are now multiple media outlets and human rights organizations using all sorts of independent data to demonstrate that, for example, 70% of residential buildings in Gaza have been destroyed since October 7th. There is virtually a complete collapse of civilian infrastructure, no sewage, no water, no hospital system. There is a likelihood of mass starvation, of treatable infections starting to spread through these very closely packed populations in these tiny little sectors of Gaza that they feel is safe, even though they continue to get bombed. It's really one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, and it is getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But at the same time, there is a lot of other very dangerous developments taking place in other places in that region because of this conflict, including in the West Bank, where the Israeli settlers, and the IDF that backs the Israeli settlers have escalated their violence quite significantly. Earlier this week, there was a bombing in Lebanon by the Israelis. There was a drone strike in Iraq that the Iraqi government blames the United States for. There is rising tension in the Red Sea with Yemen and the Houthis, and Israel and America and several other countries on the other side. And there's Iran as well, where there was a gigantic terrorist attack that killed over 100 people. And the source of that terrorist attack is still unknown, though, as I said, ISIS claimed responsibility. So you're talking about a region that is always volatile in the best of times. And now you have this extremely serious likelihood. I would call it a likelihood or a probability of some kind of serious escalation. And the United States, beginning on October 7th, deployed major military assets to the region and is directly involved in all of these escalatory risks. And the question, just like we were asking for so long when it came to the war in Ukraine, is why is the United States willing to incur these risks? What is the benefit to the United States from being involved in all of these Middle East conflicts? Here is the New York Times earlier today. Tensions escalate on the Israeli-Lebanon border as Gaza reels from deadly strikes. Quote, the killing of a Hamas leader in Beirut, the Lebanese capital, is raising fears of wider conflagration at the country's border with Israel. But many of the villages that dot Lebanon's south have already been emptied out. Clashes have been intensifying between Israel and Hezbollah, the powerful militant group that dominates much of South Lebanon, since Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel and Israel's subsequent bombing and invasion of Gaza. The number of people displaced by fighting has been growing daily, according to Hassan Hamoud, who helps run crisis management in the city of Tyre, where many have fled. Now, Hamas and Hezbollah are very different in terms of their military capabilities. Hamas has basically very primitive rockets that it launches kind of indiscriminately at Israel. Hezbollah has tens of thousands, in fact, in excess of 100,000, very precise weapons aimed directly at Tel Aviv and all sorts of other targets inside of Israel. Now, obviously, the Israelis have the capability to destroy Beirut and have threatened to do so. They've told Hezbollah, if you want us to do to Beirut, to Lebanon, what we're doing to Gaza, then go ahead and keep attacking us. But that is a conflict for multiple reasons, including Hezbollah's much greater military force. That is a very dangerous one. As well, Iran is a backer of Hezbollah. And so the potential for wider regional conflict is very high, very significant. And the United States has military assets, including large ships and planes deployed to that region since October 7th, and is there specifically to get involved if there is any sort of escalation, to try and deter escalation, but if not, to get involved in the case that there is. There's been no congressional debate about any of this, of course, no real public debate, and no explanation as to why this is in U.S. interest. That never matters. There was never really any explanation about why the still ongoing war in Ukraine was in America's interest to fund and arm and to keep going, nor has there been an explanation here. Now, as I said, the Red Sea, which is an important shipping lane that connects the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, and has a lot of ships going through it that are of important commercial value to the West, has been made into a combat zone because the Houthis have been attacking ships that appear to be linked either to the United States or to Israel, but it also involves other countries, the crews of other countries. And already Biden has ordered, and we covered this last night from the question of legality, attacks, fatal attacks on Yemeni ships, and have threatened to do so even more. From yesterday, here's Politico. U.S. and allies warn Houthis of, quote, consequences as Red Sea crisis intensifies. The statement calls for, quote, collective action amid spate of attacks in the crucial trade route. Quote, Houthi militias will face as yet unspecified, quote, consequences if they continue to, quote, threaten lives and disrupt trade flows in the Red Sea, the United States and a host of international allies said in a new statement Wednesday. The joint missive, issued simultaneously by the governments of the U.S., Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. Note that the only country in the region who they were able to get to join this coalition was Bahrain, barely a military presence at all. The Saudis are conspicuously absent, as are the Emiratis, the Egyptians. No one wants to fight in that region alongside the United States right now. The statement, quote, stops short of spelling out how the allies plan to quell mounting turmoil in the Red Sea region, but it warns that recent events pose a, quote, direct threat to global trade and constitute a significant international problem that demands collective action. So there's already been the use of U.S. military force in the Red Sea against the eminent country that the United States had been bombing, or helping Saudi Arabia to bomb from 2014, 2015. For many years, it caused a huge number of deaths and a starvation crisis in Yemen. It's the poorest country in the region, and the United States seems on the verge of, once again, entering some sort of conflict. We'll see how extensive it is, with no congressional debate, no congressional approval with Yemen. Yesterday, an Al Jazeera reporter, quite aggressively, quite diligently, I would say, pressed John Kirby, the White House national security spokesperson, for an explanation about how he can square the Biden White House's vows early on in this war that it would not do anything to be involved in an escalation of this conflict with its actions currently in the Red Sea. And here's what that exchange entailed.
Yeah, Admiral, you said that the United States doesn't want a second front, and you also said that Israel has a right and responsibility to go after the Hamas leadership. But isn't the United States and the president, aren't they exactly widening and escalating this, given the fact that the U.S. is supporting chasing Hamas leadership outside of Gaza? I mean, the fact that it's going into Lebanon, a sovereign nation.
Well, again, your question is presuming an awful lot, and is presuming that I said things I didn't say. I'm not confirming that the Israelis took this airstrike. I would refer you to them to speak to their military operations.
I did.
Well, nevertheless, I'm not confirming that they took this strike. They have a right and responsibility to go after Hamas leadership, and we expect that they'll do that in accordance with international law. Nothing's changed about the fact that we don't want the conflict to widen. I mean, heck, my opening statement was 4 or 5 pages worth of talking about all the kind of capabilities that the president's putting in the region to prevent that very outcome.
Okay, so let me follow up on that then. Given the Red Sea patrols, we knew in advance of those being set up that the Iranian defense minister said very clearly, nobody can make a move in a region where we have predominance. The United States knew that, set it up anyway. Is that not being seen as a provocation? If you know that Iran sees that as a provocation, you take the action anyway.
That's certainly turning things on their upside down, isn't it? Wouldn't you consider provocation launching ballistic missiles and drones at commercial? Wait, let me finish. Wouldn't that be considered provocation? Targeting innocent merchant shipping and innocent merchant sailors? That's a provocation. What we're doing, what Prosperity Garden is all about, and go on web, you can look at it, it's a defensive posture. It's a coalition of the willing of maritime nations coming together to try to...
I want to just highlight that what he said there was that the collection of countries the United States was able to gather in an alliance to threaten the Houthis with military force and bombing campaigns if they don't stop these attacks, he called that the coalition of the willing. which was the phrase that neocons of the Bush administration used for the group of countries that included a couple of large countries like Italy and Great Britain under Tony Blair, but also a bunch of tiny bribe countries, little island countries like Micronesia and the Marshall Islands that participated in the invasion of Iraq, and that was called the Coalition of the Willing. It's bizarre to hear him resuscitating that very discredited rhetoric from 2002, 2003, but the reality is that so much of what the administration and what the United States and what pro-Israel supporters in America have been doing since October 7th is very reminiscent of the war on terror. That was the very first thing we talked about the week after the October 7th attack, and we could see it coming. You could just see it coming a mile away, that there was going to be a type of force unleashed in Gaza and possibly in the region, unlike anything we've seen for quite some time. And that was what we kept trying to emphasize in that first week was remember the lesson of 9/11 when you're enraged about a terrorist attack, when you're drowning in this kind of quest and thirst for vengeance. It can lead you to endorse all sorts of things that you end up regretting, either on moral grounds or if you don't care about the morality of how Palestinians are treated on strategic grounds, because so much of what ends up getting done when people are just consumed with that kind of red-hot desire to destroy is counterproductive or even self-destructive. And so much of the framework since October 7th when it comes to the American debate about Israel has replicated perfectly what the debate was in the wake of 9/11, from everyone getting accused of being pro-terrorist if they don't support everything the U.S. and the Israeli government seek to do about Gaza and about Hamas, to being accused of being anti-Semitic, these kind of tactics that are designed to just shut down debate and destroy people's reputations, but also just constantly going back to what Hamas did, like people went back to what Al-Qaeda did on September 11th to justify every single thing done in the name of these attacks. And so it's not surprising that John Kirby is kind of digging up this coalition of the willing language to justify what the United States is doing, not just with Israel and Gaza, but in the broader region, because the mentality is so similar. And so many of the people who were the ones pushing and defending all the excesses after 9/11 and accusing everybody of being on the side of terrorists and all sorts of other names that they could dig up are often the very same people, the exact same people now demanding the United States pay for and fund and arm Israel as it does something very similar, not just in Gaza, but now it's spreading, just like the war on terror went from Afghanistan, where we were told Osama bin Laden was, to Iraq, and ultimately to at least 8 Muslim majority countries where the United States ended up bombing. You can see this coming. You could see it coming the week of October 7th, and you can really see it now in retrospect.
Targeting innocent merchant shipping and innocent merchant sailors, that's a provocation. What we're doing, what Prosperity Garden is all about, you can go on web, you can look at it, it's a defensive posture. It's a coalition of the willing of maritime nations coming together to try to protect international shipping that affects the global economy.
Escalation, because in turn what has happened is... So you're denying then that there has been an escalation since the Red Sea Patrol?
I totally disagree with the premise of your question.
Okay,
it wasn't the United States who decided to attack commercial shipping in the Red Sea. The Houthis did that. And who are the Houthis backed by? Iran. As I've said before, Iran provided the missiles that the Houthis are using. We are simply in a defensive posture to try to protect that commercial shipping, and we have in the last 48 hours.
Then there's been an escalation. Now Iran has launched a frigate into that, so there has been an escalation.
Okay, again, let me stop you. The fact that
I ask you again, has the United States' actions supported an escalation as a result?
No.
You said that your words said...
You asked me a question, ma'am, I answered it. No.
You said nothing the president has ordered has been designed to widen or deepen this conflict.
I stand by my answer. No.
Okay, we got to move on.
All right, so if that's comforting to you, I don't know what to tell you, because the Biden administration has shown no real signs of putting any limits on Israel. Even when, on the one occasion that it seemed to express its objection to something that Israeli ministers said they wanted to do, namely they admitted that the real purpose of this war, or at least one of the purposes of this war, is not just to destroy Hamas, but to expel Gazans and Palestinians from the Gaza Strip so that the Israelis can take it over. And the administration said, that is not our policy. We don't agree with that policy. They emphasized that they're in agreement with the policy of Netanyahu and the Israeli government because they said they've been told by Netanyahu and the Israeli government that that's not the Israeli policy either. So in the one occasion where they seem to publicly disagree with some of the more extremist Israeli ministers, they did so only by emphasizing that they were supportive of what they've been told is the Israeli policy. But other than that, the Biden administration has shown zero signs of trying to place any limits or lines whatsoever on what Israel can do. And because of how vested the United States is in this war, not just paying for it and not just providing the arms to it, but having completely isolated itself at the UN in defense of Israel, to shield Israel from any kind of public measures by the UN to stop it, this is going to be not just an American war, which is already in Gaza, but now an escalated war, a regional conflict in which the United States will be directly involved. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.